object of a targeted attack just 1 month ago. The next day, Alex got on a plane to travel to Poland for the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. He's been a very powerful voice in all of this, and I'm delighted to say that he joins me in the studio right now. Alex Ryvchin, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark.
Well, firstly, can I say, on behalf of most Australians, we're sorry. We're sorry that you're having to put up with this, and I want you to know that given the overwhelming feedback I'm receiving on this program, most Australians stand with the Jewish people, because no one deserves to live in fear and no one deserves to be put through the torment and persecution that you're going through at the moment. So on behalf of most Australians, we're sorry.
Thank you so much, Mark. And the truth is that most Australians have nothing to apologise for, because I know most Australians are good and decent, patriotic people who abhor what is happening. And I hear from them all the time. I receive messages by their hundreds on a daily basis saying, we respect this community, we stand with this community, and we hate what is being done to you. So it means a lot to know that we're not standing alone. We're standing with the vast majority of Australians. But we've seen throughout history that it can take nothing more than a vicious, determined minority to transform a country, to do horrific things. And that's why we need this majority to become vocal, to become the mass movement of this country, to drive this hatred back to the periphery of society. Because at the moment, it's infecting every facet of society, from the schools, the universities, the hospitals now. It's becoming very prevalent.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, this all started with a protest at the Opera House. We then saw cars, homes graffitied, firebombed. It deteriorated to a point where places of worship, synagogues, were being attacked. Childcare centres, schools, and now this disgraceful video that's come to light in the last 24 hours. As you keep saying, as I keep saying, what's next?
Well, the truth is we don't know. We don't know. We wake up every morning and we're amazed by the latest outrage that's occurred. And now to see healthcare professionals talking about killing people, dehumanizing Jewish Israelis in such a way, it's a real blow. But at the same time, as shocking as things are, as unpredictable as they are, they're also highly predictable. When you look at the progression, as you mentioned, from the Opera House steps, even before that, just as the news of the October 7 atrocities was breaking, you had people on the streets of West Sydney celebrating, letting off fireworks, driving through the streets, hooting their horns, clerics saying this is a day of pride and honour and joy for them. And at that point in time, this should have been snuffed out. This should have been stopped. When you're dealing with fanatics, when you're dealing with extremists, which are particularly vicious when it comes to anti-Semitism, they go as far as they're allowed to go. And too much in the early phase of things was about management of these people, placating them, appeasing them, hoping that they'd fizzle out and go back home. But when you're dealing with this element, that's never going to work. You have to confront it. You have to defeat it. And we failed early on, and now we're in a very perilous place where every day we're facing new outrages, and it's difficult to know where things are going to go next.
I've been very critical of the Prime Minister, Alex, Anthony Albanese. I said earlier that if the bushfires were Scott Morrison's I don't hold a hose moment, the anti-Semitism crisis is Anthony Albanese's missing in action moment. I want to play you something that he said in Question Time yesterday. Julian Leeser, a man you know well, a very good, decent, honest man, a Jewish member of Parliament from Sydney. He put a question to the Prime Minister yesterday in relation to this video that was uncovered on social media, and I thought it was an opportunity for Mr Albanese to show some fire in the belly, like we've seen from Chris Minns, and stare down the threat of anti-Semitism. And I was bitterly disappointed in his response. I want to play it to you, and I'll get you to make a comment off the back. This is what played out in Question Time yesterday.
Prime Minister, for the last 15 months, Jewish Australians have been subjected to harassment, doxing, firebombing, death threats and terror plots. Prime Minister, the Australian Jewish community is living in fear. How did the country get to this point?
I have seen this anti-Semitic video. It's driven by hate and it's disgusting. The comments are vile, the footage is sickening, and it is shameful. These anti-Semitic comments have no place, certainly in our health system, but no place anywhere else in Australia either. Overwhelmingly, people in our health system, our nurses, our doctors, our orderlies, they go into the health system because they care about their fellow Australians, their fellow humans. The idea that people would perpetrate, the language and hate and vile that is there in this video, versus they're talking. I'm not sure of the format. It's apparently some format where people can talk to each other in different countries. It is very clear to me that these people have committed what are crimes, and they should face the full force of the law.
That was question time yesterday, Alex. And like I say, an opportunity for him to draw a line and to say no more. Enough is enough. Are you wanting to see more from our Prime Minister?
Look, I've known the Prime Minister for a long time, and I think that he's a decent human being. I have no doubt about that. And I think he would have looked at that video like we all did and been utterly outraged. He does not want to see this sort of viciousness and hatred on our streets, in our society, no doubt about it. But he's the Prime Minister of our country. He's not a commentator. He's not an analyst. He is the man who can change the course of this country better than anybody else. And he should have drawn the line right at the beginning of this problem. When he saw people on our streets celebrating terror atrocities of abduction, mass rape and slaughter, that was the moment to say what happens abroad is one thing, but we will not have this on our streets. So I know the Prime Minister wants to correct the course of this country, but in many regards, it's too little too late. We're at a point now where leadership and words, I think, aren't enough. I don't think it can achieve the problem. We're now at a point of national security, of law enforcement. It's in the lap of the AFP, the state police, ASIO. This is where we are. But we are where we are because we've allowed it to get to this point. And for too long, his ministers gave doubt where there was no doubt. When you had people chanting intifada and the Jewish community was saying, this is a call for suicide bombings and terror attacks on our streets, you must stop this. And you had his ministers saying, well, the phrase can mean different things to different people. When you had clerics on the streets of West Sydney salivating at the atrocities that were occurring in Israel, it took weeks for that to be condemned by the local member, who also happens to be the Minister for Multiculturalism and Home Affairs. I know these are decent people who don't want this stuff, but they're not just people. They're our political leaders. They have it in their power to stop it, and I believe they failed.
I agree with you, Alex. I really do. When it comes to the two nurses in this video, what would you like to see happen to them? Because this could be a big turning point in all of this. This is an opportunity for the police to lay the appropriate charges, but for the courts, and who knows, maybe even the immigration minister, to take further action. What do you want to see as a leader in the Jewish community happen to these two nurses?
In this case, given the gravity of the incident, you have to see the most severe punishment available. And that is a matter for the police to determine what laws have been broken, for them to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law and hopefully put away for as long as possible. I'm all for giving people a second chance, for sitting down, for teachable moments. But this is not that. This is a moment that has crushed Australians' faith in our medical system. It has besmirched the many thousands of wonderful human beings that work every day to save lives. And we can in no way appease or allow any element of this. And we also have to set down a marker and send a message to others involved in this profession and throughout other professions as well, including academia, that if you abrogate your duties, if you turn on the people that you're there to serve and protect, you will be discarded. That's the message that has to be sent here. There's too much at stake to do otherwise.
Do you hold fears that other members of New South Wales Health Service share these beliefs and there may have been Jewish Australians mistreated in our hospital system? Because I've been contacted by so many people, in particular Jewish Australians, who have said, Mark, I felt uncomfortable going to a hospital being treated by somebody who was wearing a pro-Palestinian pin or a shirt or that has said something in passing. Are you hearing the same thing?
Absolutely, and I've been hearing it for a long, long time. And sometimes it takes an incident like this, which is so striking and so overt and apparent, that it actually raises the alarm for a far deeper, more prevalent problem. And for a long time, I've been hearing from members of the Jewish community about social media posts made by doctors and other health professionals, leaked private chats where people express support for terrorism and extreme ideology and anti-Semitism. We would be utterly kidding ourselves if we thought it was these two individuals and that's it. And we've seen doctors and nurses and orderlies involved in street protests And again, when people wear keffiyehs, when they wear the watermelon symbol, other symbols of the Palestinian cause, these aren't religious icons. If you want to wear a hijab or a yarmulke or a cross, no one has any objection to that whatsoever. But when you wear a keffiyeh, particularly immediately after October 7, when that is the symbol of the Palestinian so-called resistance, and we all saw what was done in the name of that resistance, you're sending a message. You're sending a message to the people you're treating and to your colleagues and to wider society. And many complaints were filed and nothing was done, frankly. But hopefully this is that watershed moment where we see real action. It's in the medical system, but it's not only there. You know, we speak a lot about academia, and we've had academics who are teaching our students, indoctrinating them with a violent, vicious ideology. We saw a few months back at Sydney University, a group of school children gathered, and academics, adults, holding microphones to their mouths and urging them to chant cursed things about Israel and the Jewish community and about intifada and violence and so forth. The fact that that was allowed, the fact that there were no consequences, the fact that the people involved still retain their jobs, retain their public grants is a travesty. And is that permissive attitude, that lack of consequences all the way through, that has seen this problem escalate and escalate and escalate?
It's interesting you say that, because I think about these protests that are happening every Sunday in the CBD. The police commissioner, Karen Webb, sat in the chair you're currently sitting in. And I put the question to her. I said, Commissioner, how are you not arresting those protesters who are holding up signs that say "from the river to the sea," which calls for the eradication of Jews? And she said to me that it doesn't meet the threshold for the laws in this state. Now, I know you're not a lawyer, you don't want to go down that path, but doesn't that just highlight the problem we've got at the moment, that we're allowing people to go onto the streets and call for the eradication of Jews, and the authorities, the politicians, are doing nothing to stop it?
Well, I was a lawyer back in the day, actually, but most Jews have that sort of background anyway. But look, I think that goes to the fact that there's a fundamental misunderstanding of what anti-Semitism is. And when we see a swastika in the streets or daubed on a building or the Nazi salute, it's unequivocal. Everyone can condemn it and take action. That's fine. But anti-Semitism rarely presents in such blatant, obvious terms. It's always been this way. It's always framed in euphemisms and code language and veiled terms. Now it's popular to use the term Zionist, but what was said of the Jews historically is said about Zionists. So it's the same hatred, the same malice that is transferred from one to the other. So fundamentally, there's a need to educate both wider society, but particularly those in law enforcement, in the judiciary, in academia, people in positions of leadership, to understand what anti-Semitism is, what it looks like and how it presents. It is not a common hatred. It does not work in the way that other forms of hatred and bigotry work, where we treat people in an inferior way because of their skin color or eye shape. Anti-Semitism is different. It views the Jews as actually being superior in some ways, but malevolent and cunning and scheming and devious and in consultation with the devil. Bloodlust, all these things. And unless you know the language, the themes, the conspiracy theories, it's very hard to spot. So I don't blame a police officer for seeing a banner that says "from the river to the sea" and thinking that's pretty benign. But you need to understand that that is an old Arabist slogan, the full version of which, "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab," which was a call for the ethnic cleansing of that land and the pushing of the Jews into the sea. Once that's understood, suddenly action can be taken. But there's been, I think, all of society has been too slow in recognizing what this is. Yeah. The fact that anti-Semitism is such a deranged hatred that it animates people's minds, it turns into a sort of mission. And until we understand the harm that it can do and the way that it spreads, we won't be able to confront it.
I'm running out of time, but I want to squeeze in a few more questions, Alex. This has affected you by being targeted at your former home. And I remember you flying to Sydney and talking quite passionately about that particular attack. Do you know if the people have found the people responsible for that, the police?
To be honest, I haven't heard from the police since that incident. The police were very good and very supportive in the immediate aftermath, counter-terrorism in particular. Also, the Premier, the Prime Minister reached out, but I haven't heard how the investigation is proceeding. But as far as I know, no arrests have been made.
Okay. The other bit of audio I want to play you this morning is the Health Minister, Ryan Park. I had him on the program in the first hour. He, to me, sounded like a broken man dealing with this. This is what Ryan Park had to say to me a little earlier today.
Yeah, I'm shattered. It's been the most difficult day for me in public office for 14 or so years. I never thought I'd see the day where two individuals dressed in a New South Wales Health uniform, paid to provide care to people, would express such vile, disgusting views. And I just am shattered. I'm really, really sorry that I've let down and we've let down the people of New South Wales, and in particular the Jewish community. I feel a great sense of responsibility for that, and a great sense of responsibility to do what I can as the minister, and I know Susan does as the secretary, to try and restore that trust. But I'm not saying that's going to happen overnight. We've got a long way to go, and that's my job going forward.
Alex, to me, he sounds like he's been impacted by all of this. And when he said that this is the most difficult day he's had in public office, I thought to myself, knowing you were coming in, you've been dealing with this for 15 months. What sort of an impact has it had on you?
Look, it hasn't been easy. You know, I've been dealing with this every single day. And for me, it's not a job, it's my life. I'm not a paid representative of a lobby or some industry. I'm a Jewish Australian, and I'm speaking up for my community and my people, and everything is on the line for me. And it's been hard. It has been hard, but at the same time, it's been the single highest privilege of my life to be able to do this, to be able to give some strength and comfort to Jewish Australians during this time. And I feel their love and support, and for all the hatred that I experience and perceive out there, the love is infinitely greater and stronger. And I will keep doing this and keep fighting the fight for as long as I need to and as long as I can. There's no question about that. This is a generational battle for the Jewish people. We face this in every generation. Someone rises up and tries to wipe us from the face of the earth. That is the lot of being a Jew. That's part of it. And we will confront this and we will defeat it, I have no doubt. And I know that with the support of good people like you, Mark, and the vast majority of Australians, we will defeat this, because we've seen anti-Semitism consume societies. It is the enemy of peace and rationalism and hope and love, and it destroys everything in its path. We have to destroy it first.
One last one before you go. Can you talk to us about your recent trip to Poland, where you were there to mark the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz? Understandably, in recent weeks and in recent months, I've read a lot and I've watched a lot of videos and history when it comes to what happened to the Jews post-World War II. What sort of impact did that have on you, going back to where millions and millions of Jews lost their lives?
Look, it gave me even greater perspective on things. You know, to be in a country where before the war there were 3 million Jews, 10% of the population of Poland was Jewish. In the big cities like Warsaw and Lublin and Krakow, every third household was Jewish. And to think how quickly, after 1,000 years of living and contributing to that country, they were marked, humiliated, robbed blind, herded into ghettos, transported via cattle cars into camps, and gassed like they were insects or fleas. Some of them were just pushed into ravines or ditches and machine gunned. I visited a place where 300 Jews were crammed into a barn and burnt alive by their Polish neighbours. Another place where 800 kids were forced into a pit and blown up with hand grenades. And you stand there and you contemplate, and you realise that, you know, in Australia, the Jews have deep roots. We've been here since the first fleet. There were up to 14 Jewish settlers on that first fleet. And we've contributed so much to this country, and we love this country so deeply. But it made me realize that if after 1,000 years of contribution to Poland, the Jews could just be exterminated to a man, it can happen anywhere. But it also, my engagement there with the survivors, it gave me such inspiration and such strength. And if they could look the ultimate evil in the eye, emerge from those camps and the death marches with no family members left, having seen the greatest atrocities we could imagine, and retain their hope and their goodness and humanity and their willingness to fight, then certainly I can. So it's given me greater courage and inspiration for what lies ahead.
Alex Ryvchin, I've been lucky enough to meet some pretty incredible people doing this job. You're up there, mate.
Thank you so much.
Honestly, you really are. The way in which you speak, the way in which you advocate for Jewish people is ultra impressive. I implore you to keep doing what you're doing, because you're making a real difference out there. And I know that the Jewish community have communicated it to you. They've also communicated to me, and that is that we need more Alex Ryvchins in this world. Good on you, mate. Lovely to see you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much.
There he is, Alex Ryvchin. What a remarkable Australian, a remarkable Jewish Australian. Here in the studio with me, the co-CEO of the Executive Council of the Australian Jury. It's